Good morning, everyone. Yeah, very good morning. Shall we start the session or shall we wait for others? Okay, all right, wait for others. So let's start the session again. So this is the next HTML tag that is used over here. Sorry, CFML tag that is used over here, not the HTML tag. This is the form 3 that then we use the P tag for the paragraph. Thank you for visiting the page. Whatever we do use in the paragraph that is expressed by the P. Then express your feelings, opinion, and if you have complete and submitted the two forms with the preference for the product A and B, you are eligible to participate in the lottery system. Then the P will be closed. So this is a paragraph that comes in the paragraph form. Then CF form action, that is a save to.cf. So this is again the form we are using for the CF code viewer. So what is the attribute over here? Then action, then save to.cf. Then P tag, again there is a paragraph tag, your name, CF input type, text name equals to name, required equals to yes, then P will be closed. Then P, email address, CF input type, text name, email, required yes, P will be closed. Then P, input type submit, name submit, value submit, P will be closed. Then the CF form will be closed. Yes, it is used with the same as it is what we have covered in the HTML. The main only difference is that we use the CF form instead of only the form. Everything is same. Tags are represented in the left angle bracket, right angle bracket, everything that is same over here. So this is a P, your name, then email address, then submit or type equals to submit, name submit, value submit, and CF form will be closed. And this cookie identification will also be attached in this form when returned, and we can check that the visitor is eligible as a participant in the lottery or not. And this save to.cfm templates take care of saving the cookie, user identification of the visitor, his or her name, and the address in the address.txt. And as for the first text file, this template is for the existence of the file and establishes the file if necessary. So whatsoever the file they are using or whatsoever the data they are using, so they are using for the existence of the file. The next is the save to.cfm, that again the next template. CF if is defined. So it is if it is defined, address.txt that is equals to 0. So we are using is defined, or we are checking the condition if it is defined address.txt, then if it is equals to 0, so CF file action equals to write. So we use the action write, file equals to address.txt, then output equals to address text file. So there are three attributes over here. Tag name is CF file, and attributes are the action, file, and the output. Again CF will be closed. Then CF file action, that is the append, then file session path, address path, then user ID, cookie, user ID, name, form name, email address, form email. So the CF file will be used as an append, that is used with the attributes action, file, output, name, email address. Then the CF file will be closed. So CF file will be open, and again there are three attributes, two attributes, then CF file will be closed. Then CF file, yes, it is closed, and the CF location URL is the index.cf. And by sorting and merging saved responses in the response.txt and the address.txt, we can establish a list of names and addresses for all the visitors that have returned to form with preference, and the form will their email address. So we can sort, we can send the responses, we can save the response in the two text files, two txt files. One is the response.txt and the address.txt. We can also establish a list of the names and the addresses for all the visitors that have returned to form with the preferences, and the form with their email address. And this lottery can easily be carried out for the market research analysis, the file response.txt, that will give two main classes of data. First, all the responses can be used to analyze the overall preference of product A and B. Second, all the responses are sorted by the form 1 and 2 that can be used to analyze the effect of the order. So that means first is mm, yes, tell me. And these two are the text files. So I'm giving the explanation what is the use of these text files. The first one, each and every response can be used to analyze the overall preference for the product A and B. That is, we are going to analyze what we have covered in the products A and B. Second, each and every response that is sorted out by A and B of form 1 and 2 can be used to analyze the effect of the ordering. And the third, at the last, the responses, whatever the response that is given, that response will be given by the user identification and the time received that can be used for investigation, the preference persistence over the time. That means we are analyzing the products we are used for the making the product analyzed that can be used for the investigation. And this template report.cf and also displayed an unedited display of the response.txt file that can be easily be copied and processed by the Excel. Next is the report.cfm CF file action 3 variable report. Now what is a file? What is a path? That is the C drive session path response.txt. Then CF file will be closed. Then CF output will be opened, then there is a report, CF output will be closed. Yes, this is the report of CFM that is used with the file, that is used with the action, variable, file. So there are three, we can say the attribute that is used with the CF file tag. Then CF file will be closed. Then new tag will be opened, CF output. Again there is a report, then CF output will be closed. So insert the value of the cookies, which will indicate that some visitors have been visiting several times. And you can also see the content of the address.txt of the same menu, that is the menu page, by means of the similar template. And inspect the values, whatever the values that is used to inspect by the carry on with the address.txt from the menu page by means of a similar template report2.txt. Now this is one of the exercise. You have to read out this one and pass the data between the templates. Now with the use of the templates and the cookie, you will be able to read about the CF file tag. Now, study this application, market research carefully, and in this first form, it is possible to request a questionnaire 1, questionnaire 2, or a questionnaire 3. And that will be more professional if only questionnaire 1 could be called. If this was the first time, this was the first visit, only the questionnaire 2, and if the first has already been submitted, and only the questionnaire 3. If both the previous questionnaires have been added up, have been completed out. So we are taking about the questionnaires. If one is completed, move to the next one. Next one is completed, move to the third. And then we just copy and install the templates on your computer and try to run the application. There are some problems that will be available, but we can extend the assortment to 3 competing products. How would you rearrange the experiment to obtain an unbiased set of preferences? Is session number 4, that is the web database for the opinion polls. So how we can use the database that is used in the web for the opinion polls? So first concept over here is a file and the database. What is the difference between the file and database? So whenever we collect multiple records, that makes a file. Whenever I combine multiple files, that makes a database. So in simple terms, database is a huge concept that stores multiple files, and file is a narrower concept that stores multiple records. For example, we have created one file for the employee that includes the employee ID, name, salary, position. This is the one file, and we have to maintain the records. For example, XYZ employee has a 001 ID, then there are the name and other the salary records, position. In the same way, another record, another record. So when we combine multiple records, that becomes one file, that is the employee. In the same way, second file, that is the student, for example, that includes the roll number, that is unique, name, age, marks, anything that you want to add up. Now, for example, there is a student ABC. We are going to supply the roll number, name, age, marks. One record, next record, next record. So when I combine multiple records in a student profile or student record, student table, that becomes one table or the file. Now, when we combine employee, student, these together into the one part, that becomes a that is known as a basically database. So this we are using the tag, that is a CF file, which permits storing and retrieving of files on the disk whenever it is needed. However, the files needed or created by the CF file can only be written, appended, read or deleted. If any operation on the individual records have been recorded up, such as a conditional modification or retrieving of the file that are needed, so file has to read into the memory before it can be processed. So first of all, it's going into the memory. Best example, when we study about the C++, so we use cout if it is a user defined. Then we use cin also to store into the memory, otherwise it gives an error. It can be processed and then rewritten into the new form, and the modern databases can also store the complete collection of the data and the flexible methods for inserting and retrieving data exists. So whatsoever the data that is exists over here, so we permit, we make the insertion, we make the retrieval for these databases. Next part is what is a database. So this is not in a course in a database, but databases are frequently needed in connection with the web application. They are much more required in the web application. So we limit our discussion to establish a database to the web server by means of the SQL language that is included in the CFM. And there is an established database that includes one or more tables. As I said, this includes a database of the combination of the multiple tables. And each table has one or more named columns and zero or more identifiable rows with the column data. As I said, this records or this contains multiple records. In the same way, it has one or more named columns that are also known as the fields, attributes, and zero or one identifiable rows also with the column data. And the connection between the web application and the database we use with the help of our JDBC, Java Database Java Database Connectivity, which permits the interrogations and the updating of the database by means of the SQL statement. And in some cases, the JDBC driver will also have to cooperate behind the scene with the OTBC drivers. So whatever the database which included, which can be used to manipulate, which can be used to as a backend profile, to the cold fusion applications that are limited to those for which adequate the drivers exist for the operations that system hardware performs or platform performs. And for the Windows XP 2000, there must exist a window, there must exist a column or driver that exists for the operations hardware platforms used. And for Windows 2000 for XP, on which this course is based, drivers for the MS Access, for the Excel, MySQL, SQL Server, that are few are included over here. That must be included for exist, that must be included for a number of the database operations platforms. And more efficient native drivers for the DB2, Informix, Oracle, and the Sysbase are also available from the Macromedia to be used with the CFMX enterprise version. In this course, we are not using the SQL, but we are using the MS Access database. There are not significant functionality used, and the MySQL database can be downloaded, and it is an attractive, and as well as the alternative method that is used over here. So whatever the database we are using up, that is named as the data source, and the registers with the CFMX admin administrator as an accessible database, and the extension for database source name is DB. Yes, it is controlled by the CFMX admin. This URL is given over here, HTTP, then localhost 8500 CFID admin. Yeah, if you can use another web browser, it is the same without the port header, that is 8500. This is a local host. Then the CFMX SQL, that is also used with the data source as a data object. That is given with the CF query, CF data, and then CF query will be closed between the which the SQL are the inserted out, and the tag insert over here is CF query. The name is my query. Data source is session data source. Then SQL statements will be used over here, and the CF query will be closed. And the name is a useful preference or the reference to the output from a database transaction if it is needed, in other places for the current or the other templates also. And the only requirement is that a unique name is also chosen out, and database source parameter specifies which database is relevant. In our course, whatsoever the data, whatsoever the scenario that is used, so the database is the DB, which implies that a CF set session data source DB that must be set usually as a part of the application.cf.